Hi, everyone. I am Kate Berkner here with Dr. Tom Phelan, author and creator of 123 Magic, as well as the Manager Mom Epidemic. Dr. Phelan, welcome.
Hi, Kay. How you doing?
I'm good. It's a lovely Wednesday here in Chicagoland, so it's nice to have. So today we are going to talk about something that I think could be a little bit controversial. In your book, The Manager Mom Epidemic, you talk about this concept of the equal suffering law, which I think is actually going to resonate with a lot of moms who are watching. Can you explain what the equal suffering law is?
Yes, I think you're right. I think it resonates with moms, and I think also it makes people a little uncomfortable. But the equal suffering law is the idea, basic idea, that in any permanent human group, whether it's a family, a work group, or a school or whatever, there's an assumption or a rule that everybody should be contributing equally to the common welfare to the extent that they are able. So if you have a family, for example, and you have a mom and a dad, well, you'd expect them to contribute to the common welfare equally. If you had preschoolers, you wouldn't expect them to because they're not able to. Or if you had an aging parent who is in a wheelchair or has some health problem or something, you wouldn't expect them to. But generally speaking, it involves moms and dads in a family, and it involves the kids more and more as they get older and more capable of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you share a statistic in the book that I think is so interesting, that in over 2/3 of all marriages that involve children, both parents work, which feels like a pretty significant change, since the 50s, when I think a lot of sort of our societal ideas of what the division of labor at home should be came from. So that's the fact that so many families have two working parents really has to mean a change to the way that we think about how work gets done at home, right?
It really does, and the people who are doing most of that thinking, of course, are the moms. So a lot of moms in the Second World War went to work while the men were away, and they got used to doing it. They also got used to enjoying it, and so they said, "Well, I want a piece of that action. I want to get out there as well." But then when you come home at the end of the day, you have a problem. But Arlie Hochschild called the second shift for moms. So a second shift is I still have my household chores, primary, secondary childcare chores at the end of the day after I've worked, just like my husband did. And I come home and now I've got to do all this other stuff. And that, of course, is going back to your first question. That is where the primary violation of the equal suffering law is seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the things that have to get done at home, kind of what are the major categories of work that parents have to get accomplished at home?
Yeah, the biggest ones really are going to be primary childcare and to some extent secondary childcare, but then household chores. So if you think of primary childcare defined by the American Time Use Survey is when you are with a child and what you're doing, you're totally involved with them. So you're changing a diaper or you're feeding them or driving them to soccer, but you can't be doing anything else, even watching TV. That's primary child care. And so the moms get, stuck or whatever, how are we going to say it, with more primary child care than the dads. But then there's also household tasks and household chores like shopping, preparing meals, cleaning the kitchen, doing laundry, cleaning the house and that kind of stuff. And those things also, the moms do a disproportionate amount of that kind of those kinds of tasks as well. So we have sort of inequity in both of those things, the primary child care and the household tasks. So the kids are a big part of it. And of course, the other household tasks with kids, those household tasks take more hours than they do if you don't have kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you said the moms get stuck with it or what have you, I mean, I think that for the people who hear that and they say, well, but I love my kids and I love spending time with my kids, that's we're not saying that is not true. But it becomes a challenge when it really starts impinging on any free time that mom might want to have, or on sort of mom's happiness and her emotional well-being, right? Like if she's really overwhelmed or overloaded with sort of this imbalance of these responsibilities, that's sort of the situation that we're talking about.
Yeah, it really does. And I think the part of the problem is moms gravitate to it. There's a phrase, intensely, frequently, and so on, that moms, if they see something needs to be done, they're going to go do it. The dads and the kids don't have that same aggressive stance or the same attitude that I'm going to get this done. So something is going to fall between the cracks. Who's going to pick it up? Mom's going to pick it up if it's primary child care or, household tasks and that kind of thing. And that aggravates the inequity at home.
Yeah. So, what are some of the things that contribute to that imbalance? Like, what is driving mom to be the one to pick those things up?
Well, you have a general argument about how much of this is cultural and how much is hereditary, and so on. And I really think I really think it's both. But I think moms have inside them what I call the mommy ID, or the maternal identity, about what it takes to be a good mom. And that means mom is president, mom is first responder, mom is chief servant. And the last one on the list, the 10th one on my list anyway, has to do with free time. I think there's a sort of a rule that many moms feel that if I have any free time, it's supposed to be spent with the family, or it's supposed to be doing household tasks or anything like that. Free time just for me to goof off, is by myself, is almost a bad thing. I'm not supposed to do it.
Yeah, that's which is such a harmful point of view for your mental health, because as much as you love your family and as much as you want your household to be running smoothly, self-care has become such a buzzword lately. And a lot of times you say self-care and people are like, yeah, bubble baths, long walks, whatever. But at the same time, to borrow a concept, you have to fill your own bucket, and not just so you can be better at taking care of your family, though it will make you better at taking care of your family, but like just for you as a human. I think, what Mommy ID speaks to is how easy it is for moms to sort of lose or forget the concept that like they're an individual human that is not just there to be in service of others. It is okay, and it is good to have your own kind of interests and passions and things that you want to pursue, but you also need the time to pursue those.
You really do. And I think that filling your own bucket is one way of looking at it, because I think for a lot of moms, the idea is my job is to fill other people's buckets, and filling my bucket is almost a bad thing to do. And so it takes, you really have to work on a mom's maternal identity, almost their conscience, about filling your own bucket, because that's seen as almost a criminal activity that should be avoided.
Well, and I think the thing that's so interesting is if you implement the things in the manager mom epidemic, not only is mom now getting more of an opportunity to fill her own bucket, but it actually is also kind of teaching your kids to help fill other people's buckets as well, right? Like your kids will help to fill your bucket, and your kids will help to fill your husband's bucket, or your partner's bucket. So I think that it's one of the sort of, there are multiple benefits to to thinking about this. And
I think so. And I think if you look at it a couple of ways, you don't want to model manager mom behavior for your daughter, especially because she's going to be, then she'll be more inclined to do that. And the other thing that I like, it's kind of a challenging and heartwarming statement, is that your family, your kids and your husband really need to see you happy and enjoying their company. If you're really into manager mom and you're chief servant and stuff like that, too often it's martyr mom. And I'm a servant who is not happy, but that's my job. Well, how do you think other people feel if you're waiting on them all the time? When they sit and reflect on that, they're going to feel bad. They're going to feel guilty. So we need a little more equality in terms of the division of labor.
yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to kind of finding that equality, I know that the concept of keeping score is kind of seen as almost like a dirty word, right? Like it's a bad thing, like, oh, you don't need to be keeping score. Why are we keeping score? That type of thing. Uh, should we be keeping score in our houses? Like, is that a thing that is important and necessary, even if most people feel like it's not a positive thing?
Well, I'm going to answer it a little bit differently. You can't help but keep score. You have no choice. The equal suffering law is way down here. It's ingrained, it's evolutionary. You're stuck with it. But people are ambivalent about it. And that's what you're pointing out, is that they think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This is cheap. This is selfish. This is superficial. I should be more loving and stuff like that. Well, that's great. But the equal suffering law is there, and it'll nag away at you. And I'm really convinced that one of the chief sources of divorce is the intense resentment that the equal suffering law violations put inside a mom in particular, that just, it burns away the relationship. And I think it often leads to divorce. So it's like, okay, you don't want to do it. You have mixed feelings about it. That's too bad. You're stuck with it, and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I liked what you said when we were chatting right before we came on live, that this is really about like giving permission to do that, because it's not like a petty bad thing. It's actually just a tool to help you identify like what's happening in your house, because until you identify sort of where the imbalances are, you can't move towards fixing them in any way. And so you end up just kind of sitting and stewing in this place of martyrdom or resentment or whatever it is.
Yeah, you have to identify the inequities. You have to deal with the mommy ID inside, and then you can start going after some free time.
Yeah. So now that we know that is an okay, and in fact a good thing to be doing, is there like a hard and fast rule of how people should be kind of trying to divvy up things for the equal suffering law?
Yeah, you can look at the list. You can look at the primary childcare. What do we have? What are we doing with the kids? So say it was homework, up and out in the morning, if there was no COVID, and all this kind of stuff. And then the household tasks of cleaning and cooking and cleaning up the kitchen and shopping and that kind of thing. And then we talk about what we call complete responsibility transfers. How do we transfer this stuff from mom to a child or to dad? But a complete responsibility transfer means moms don't remind anybody to do it. So the data is showing us that dads are doing more of these kind of tasks at home, but the qualification is that they're doing them when they're reminded by their wife. And so that's half a step in the right direction. We need to go the other half step.
Dr. Phelan, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kay.